What if the person you trusted most spoke the darkest truth, in their sleep? And what if your daughter recorded it, without even knowing? This is not just a story about betrayal. It's about a voice never meant to be heard, and the chain reaction it set off. Nathan was the kind of man most would call dependable. Not extraordinary, just steady. He taught high school history in the same small New England town he grew up in. A man of routines, coffee with 2 sugars, tie perfectly knotted, classroom chalk always white, never colored. His wife, Julia, 37, worked night shifts as a nurse at the city hospital, 12-hour marathons that left her hollow-eyed but determined. And then there was Ava, 8 years old, bright, curious, full of quiet questions, the kind of child who watched more than she spoke, who once asked if the moon ever felt lonely. On Ava's birthday, her maternal grandfather gifted her a smartwatch. It was sleek, soft pink, and packed with features: pedometer, heart rate monitor, voice assistant, and an always-on voice recorder, activated by noise above a certain threshold. Nobody paid much attention to that last detail, not until it was too late. One Friday night, Julia returned from work, exhausted but wound-tight. She lay down beside Ava, who had insisted on a girls' sleepover night in the master bed. Nathan, out grading papers in the kitchen, didn't protest. He welcomed the space. Lately, there had been a tension he couldn't name, something evasive in Julia's eyes when they spoke, a glance that darted away too quickly, an edge in her tone that hadn't always been there. Ava's smartwatch rested on the bedside table, charging. At 2:11 a.m., a faint sound activated the microphone. I should have ended it. If only I had ended it when I could. Then a pause. If I had aborted sooner, maybe I wouldn't be stuck like this. The voice was Julia's, low, slurred with sleep, but unmistakable. 3 minutes of barely coherent murmurs. Names, frustrations, then silence. The watch uploaded the file to the shared family cloud, under a folder titled Audio Clips. The next morning, Nathan opened his email and saw the notification: new audio file uploaded from Ava's smartwatch. Curious, he clicked. His coffee turned bitter in his mouth as Julia's voice filled his earbuds. He listened once, then again, and again, each time hoping he'd misunderstood. But he hadn't. He stared across the kitchen at the closed bedroom door. The hum of the refrigerator grew louder. The world dimmed. His hands trembled. He didn't confront Julia, not yet. He did something worse. He began watching her. He checked her call logs, her text history, what little she hadn't deleted. He mapped her work shifts, searched social media posts, tracked her mood swings. Everything took on a sinister tone. Every smile felt like theater. Every kiss goodnight, a lie rehearsed. But it wasn't betrayal of his marriage that hollowed Nathan. It was betrayal of something more sacred, the love of a parent for their child. To say you wish you had aborted your daughter, and to say it so casually, so bitterly, even in sleep, was a violence he could not explain away. And yet he said nothing. Not to Julia, not to Ava, not even to himself in the mirror. Instead, he buried the truth in a new folder on his laptop, labeled simply, Answers. He knew this was just the beginning. The voice had spoken, and there was no unhearing it. Nathan didn't listen to the recording just once. He listened to it dozens of times, each time hoping his ears had deceived him. But they hadn't. The tone, the phrasing, the exhaustion-tinted cruelty in Julia's voice, it was all real. And it pierced through every foundation of trust they had built over 15 years of marriage. He didn't confront her immediately. Instead, he forwarded the audio clip to someone who had always been both distant and protective, Julia's mother. Margaret. She was a stern woman, a retired librarian who valued truth over comfort. Her response came within the hour, a single-line reply that read, "Come over, bring Ava." When Nathan arrived, Margaret sat in silence with a cup of untouched tea, her face pale. "I don't know this version of Julia," she said finally. "I don't want to." That night, the recording made its way to Julia's father. Richard. Unlike Margaret, Richard was explosive, a self-made entrepreneur. He had funded Julia's nursing school, bought their first house, even set up a trust fund for Ava. When he heard the audio, he didn't just feel betrayed as a father, he felt deceived as an investor in his daughter's life. Julia was summoned to a family meeting. It wasn't a conversation, it was an inquisition. She arrived defensive, eyes bloodshot, her explanations tangled in deflections. "I was exhausted," she insisted. "I didn't mean any of it. You know how stress talks through you when you're half asleep." Richard didn't buy it. Within 48 hours, he began the legal processes to sever Julia from every financial tether he controlled. Bank accounts were locked, credit cards declined, the house deed was quietly restructured. Julia woke up one morning to find her car repossessed and her healthcare license under review due to an anonymous tip citing mental instability. Nathan, meanwhile, had been quietly preparing his exit. He filed for divorce and sole custody of Ava. The evidence was irrefutable, and while Julia fought back with public tears and private threats, the court saw through her. Her visitation rights were restricted to supervised meetings twice a month. Eventually, she stopped showing up altogether. Ava was 8, and though she couldn't grasp the legal language or the adult betrayals, she began asking simpler, sharper questions. Why doesn't Mom want to live with us anymore? Or, was I a mistake? Nathan didn't have answers, so he gave her what he could: presents, morning pancakes, walks to school, bedtime stories about brave girls and the fathers who never left them. He deleted the recording but kept the pain, folding it into his resolve. Julia disappeared into the outskirts of the city, living in a one-bedroom apartment with blackout curtains and too much wine. The silence from Ava stung more than any court order. She tried sending gifts, but Ava never opened them. Her name faded from household conversations like a myth no one wanted to retell. Ava became fascinated with devices. Not in the usual way. She wasn't gaming or glued to social media. She studied them, how smartwatches detected movement, how cloud backups worked, how voices could be indexed, searched, and resurrected. Nathan noticed but never interfered. In her quiet obsession, she had found a form of therapy. And in that therapy, a seed of something else began to grow, not bitterness, not vengeance, but purpose. A cloud once filled with a mother's careless words had become Ava's private sky of truths. She had learned that technology could forget nothing. And someday, neither would she. Ava was 18 when she realized her father had only told her half the story. By then, she was already 2 years into her cybersecurity degree, thriving in a program that she had outpaced in months. Professors praised her as gifted. She wasn't just good with code, she understood it the way artists understood brushstrokes. There was beauty in silence, in fragments, in the spaces between what people say and what machines record. And perhaps that's why the old audio file, the one her father said had changed their lives, never quite left her mind. The 3-minute clip had become something like a family relic. Nathan never explicitly told her what it meant, only that it was the reason her mother left, and that some truths weren't meant for children. But Ava had always wondered. The line about wishing she had aborted, a line that still rang like a ghost inside her head, seemed like it had come from the middle of something. Like a scream pulled out of a longer cry. So, one winter night, she went digging. She booted up her old smartwatch, still miraculously functional, and synced it to a restored cloud backup she had reverse-engineered from residual metadata on an outdated server. It took 4 hours and a custom Python script. But eventually, she found it, 6 audio files, all timestamped within a 90-minute window that night 10 years ago. She listened to them alone, in her dark bedroom, the glow of her laptop painting her face pale blue. And there it was, her mother's voice again. But not just regret, fear. I can't let Nathan find out. If he knows about what I did with him, it'll destroy everything. Ava froze. With him? Who was him? The next file had background noise. The rustling of sheets. Her mother's breath hitching. Quiet. Almost inaudible. But then another voice. Male. Faint. Not Nathan's. That's when the question flipped. What had her father hidden from her? She began watching him more carefully. Her father, once her hero, now a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. He was meticulous, calm, a creature of routine, but he never let her near his old electronics. Never left his phone unattended. And once, just once, she heard him talking in hushed tones in the garage to a man she didn't recognize. The words were clipped, purposeful. The files are gone, but she's curious again, so delete what's left. We can't let her dig. Ava didn't sleep that night. She broke into his old laptop the next day. It took her 15 minutes. Hidden in a locked folder was a cache of voice memos and image files. Some were benign, others weren't. One showed a burned-out car frame in a wooded area. Time-stamped almost exactly 10 years ago. Another file, an audio memo, had her father's voice, calm, resolved, handled, no loose ends. Her breath caught. The pieces began to fall into place. The next morning, the news ran a story about a cold case reopening. A man named Vincent Hale, ex-boyfriend of Julia, her mother, had died in a suspicious vehicle fired 10 years ago. New forensic technology had uncovered inconsistencies. The police were looking into past connections. Ava didn't tell her father what she knew. Not yet. Instead, she reached for the old smartwatch. The one that had started it all. She modified it, added new firmware, a silent trigger, and linked it to an encrypted server only she controlled. Then she waited for the right moment. This time, the confessions wouldn't come in whispers. They would come in high fidelity. And this time, she would be the one recording the truth. The software Ava installed onto her smartwatch wasn't available to the public. It was something she had engineered herself, an voice capture program capable of tagging and analyzing tone, stress levels, and inconsistencies in speech. It wasn't designed for casual surveillance. It was designed to listen deeply. Each night, the device sat innocuously on her wrist as she moved through the house with silent intention. Syncing seamlessly with her laptop in the bedroom. She told her father it was for fitness tracking. He had no reason to doubt her. For 3 weeks, she waited. 3 weeks of mundane conversations, quiet dinners, predictable routines, and lonely mutterings from Nathan as he folded laundry or stared out the window. Then, late one night, the AI flagged a whisper. It wasn't just tone, it was what was said. She can never know. That's buried. 10 years ago, we made sure. The voice was Nathan's. He was alone. He had no idea the walls were listening. Ava's fingers trembled as she replayed the segment. Then, a name appeared. Another voice in the background. Older, hoarser, Raymond. Ava had no memory of him, but she found him in an archived hospital staff list. Raymond, night guard, worked the maternity wing, quit shortly after Ava's birth. That same night, Ava compiled everything, every flagged phrase, every compressed data packet, and uploaded it to a secure whistleblower platform run by a non-profit journalistic consortium. She encrypted it 3 times. Then she hit send. Within 24 hours, the house changed. It wasn't the silence, it was the arrival of noise. Sirens, commands, a knock that wasn't a knock but a declaration. Police raided their home with forensic warrants. Nathan didn't resist. He didn't ask why. He simply raised his hands. Among the items seized, a folder marked Maternity, Confidential, 3 USB drives, and a journal Ava had never seen, handwritten, leather-bound, and locked. Meanwhile, across the city, a social worker tracked down Julia. She had vanished into herself. But not off the grid. Her name still existed, floating quietly behind support group rosters and pharmacy records. She agreed to testify, no longer combative, just empty. The grand jury convened within days. Charges were formal: tampering with evidence, aiding and abetting obstruction of justice, and criminal negligence resulting in death. It wasn't just one man burned in that car a decade ago. It was what he knew, what he threatened to expose. Nathan's defense was weak. Raymond denied everything until shown transcripts and vocal prints. The case began to write itself. Then came the final blow. A clip, sent anonymously. In it, Ava sat before a camera. 18 now, straight posture, no makeup, no performance. When I was 8, she began, my mother whispered something in the dark. And the world changed. 10 years later, I gave my father the same chance. I listened. Now, it's your turn. The room fell to silence when the clip ended. Ava never named herself, but everyone knew who she was. Her parents' daughter, the one whose birth had been bathed in lies. The one who now used truth as her only inheritance. Nathan looked down. Julia didn't meet anyone's gaze. Both rendered mute, not by guilt alone, but by the sound of a voice that had finally spoken for itself. And Ava, somewhere far away, shut her laptop. It was enough. Ava was no longer the daughter of Julia or Nathan. She was the daughter of recordings, of whispers saved, of truths buried and unearthed by data. She didn't belong to bloodlines or family trees. She belonged to the cloud, to the chain of digital echoes that had made her who she was. In the years after the trial, Ava became a public figure in an entirely different way. Not as a celebrity, not as a survivor, but as a voice. She pursued degrees in cybersecurity, digital forensics, and ethics. Her thesis, Inherited Deceit, the ethical ownership of family data. It became required reading in several universities. She traveled the world speaking not just about technology, but about morality, about silence, about how modern betrayal didn't need bruises or broken vows, only a forgotten backup folder. An accidental sync. On the TEDx stage in Berlin, she said to a packed audience, "My parents taught me a single truth: never trust the silence. The world records us more than we know. And sometimes, what it captures isn't a crime, until it's played back." The applause that followed wasn't for pain, but for clarity. Ava wrote a book titled Echoes of the Cloud. It was a memoir, but also a manifesto. In one of the final chapters, she wrote, "Blood speaks softly, but data never forgets." Julia lived her last years in a psychiatric care facility, diagnosed with severe dissociative disorder. She spent her days rereading old medical notes and mumbling to people no longer alive. No one visited, not even staff unless required. Nathan died in prison. The official cause was never released. Some speculated suicide. Others said he never adapted to confinement. Ava received a call from the warden. She said, "Thank you for letting me know," and hung up. She didn't ask for a funeral notice. She didn't attend, not his, not her mother's. When it came, she left no flowers, no messages, but every year on her birthday, Ava opened her laptop and sent a single email. To herself. Subject line, "Log it. Don't forget, Netflix called once, then HBO." A studio from Seoul offered to dramatize her childhood. She declined them all. "I don't need to be watched," she said. "I need to preserve the quiet. The right kind of quiet." And still, on her wrist, was the same smartwatch, a different strap now, sleeker, adult, but the device was the same one that, years ago, had captured her mother's midnight whisper and changed the course of 3 lives. It no longer recorded, but it didn't need to. It was a relic, a reminder, a silent totem that told her every day, "Listen closely. Every truth begins as a whisper."